what's up guys? Welcome to episode 29 of Retro Buyer's Guide. Like so many others, a couple weeks ago I saw Star Wars The Force Awakens in theaters, and let me tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought J.J. Abrams did a wonderful job reinvigorating the franchise and making me excited for future Star Wars movies. After seeing the prequels in theaters, I wasn't so sure if this was going to be the movie that was going to get me back into Star Wars, but everything about it I enjoyed, and I absolutely loved it, and so I can't wait for episode 8, even though that's 2017. So in the meantime, I thought we could take a look at some retro Star Wars games, revisit some of those old Star Wars games from the past, and check them out and see if they still hold up today. I've got a few here, so let's go ahead and check them out.
Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back for the Atari 2600 is one of the first Star Wars games I ever played. There's not much to it, but that's to be expected with the Atari 2600. As you can see, you control a rebel speeder shooting down AT-ATs during the Battle of Hoth. The yellow bar at the bottom represents how far you can move from left to right before the screen wraps. As you can see, the more damage you do to the AT-ATs, they change color. Occasionally you'll see a flashing square like the one you just saw, indicating you can kill the Imperial Walker with one strategically placed shot, although this is not always easy to pull off. The Imperial Walkers will change colors quite a few times, as it takes a lot of shots to bring them down. It can be quite challenging too, since they're shooting at you the entire time. But with a little persistence, it can be done. Maybe it's not the best Star Wars game, but I'll always have fond memories of this one because it was my first. Star Wars the arcade game for the Colecovision is a port of the popular 1983 vector graphics game. While obviously not using vector graphics, the developer Parker Brothers did a pretty good job recreating the feel of the arcade game on the ColecoVision hardware. The game takes place during the famous Death Star battle in Episode 4, where you pilot an X-Wing and take on several waves of TIE fighters. Once you've shot an adequate number of TIE fighters, you'll end up piloting down a narrow trench of the Death Star, where you'll need to shoot a proton torpedo into the exhaust port at the exact right moment. Do this correctly and the Death Star is destroyed. Then it's back to shooting TIE fighters all over again. For what it is, I enjoyed it, but nothing beats playing the actual arcade game on a vector monitor. Star Wars for the Famicom is a weird one. It was developed by Namco and never released here stateside, but it's definitely worth checking out, if anything, just for all the bizarre content. You start out with this nice little cutscene of Luke Skywalker seeing the holographic Leia for the first time from R2-D2, and here's some of the game. Now Luke has black hair for some reason. At least they start you off with a lightsaber. You'll make your way from the left to the right side of the screen, killing literally anything that gets in your way. If you don't, one hit and you're dead. That's right, one hit. So you've got to be extra careful. Taking my time, I was able to make it into the Sandcrawler at the end of the first level, but not much further than that. Kind of like the Technodrome in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, once you go inside the Sandcrawler, it's several screens big, which is kind of funny. I tried really hard to get to the part of this game that everybody knows, which is Darth Vader turning into a scorpion, but I was never able to do it, so you'll have to settle for a screenshot instead. Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back was released here for the NES. There was also a game based on Episode 4 released here, but I don't have it. In this game, you start off as Luke riding his Tauntaun, fighting off waves and waves of enemies. At the end of the level, you'll reach an ice cave, which you'll need to navigate. Despite many attempts, I was never able to get past this ice cave. From the precision platform jumps that you have to make, to these really annoying robots that shoot lasers in multiple directions, it was just too much for me. I know I made it further when I was a kid, which means I probably have a lot less patience now. Either that or I was better at video games when I was younger, who knows. Either way, the game's not really something that I wanted to stick with. I didn't really enjoy my time with it that much, but maybe you'll like it more if you enjoy a challenge.
TIE Fighter is the sequel to X-Wing, and it's one of the most beloved games from my childhood. I played the crap out of this when it came out on PC. You can see here it comes on 5 floppy disk, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to take a look at it in just a second. Well, let's see what else is in the box real quick while we have it open. TIE Fighter, the official strategy guide, 350-page book, good grief, 1995. Alright, let's see what this is. Help the Empire Strike Back. Are you ready for more heart-pounding action and excitement? Take the challenge in the first TIE Fighter campaign disc and help the dark side finish off the Rebel Alliance. If you liked TIE Fighter, you'll love the exciting set of brand new missions available only in the campaign disc. We dare you to try these new missions because the Force is growing within the Rebel troops. These could be the hardest missions of your life. $23.95. I wonder what would happen if I sent this in. Probably nothing. Available fall of 1994. Wow. We got a computer game review and CD-ROM entertainment subscription. And it looks like a Galaxy of Tactics, Strategies, and Survivals free. Electronic Entertainment. Wow. I think I remember reading that magazine when I was a kid. We also have, it's like a little survey card for LucasArts. Who are no more. And then another survey card, TIE Fighter survey. Alright. And a little quick start guide here. TIE Fighter Wars. And I love this. It's the manual for TIE Fighter, but it says Starfighter Pilot Manual. That's great. Anyway, let's check out some TIE Fighter.
I played a lot of TIE Fighter as a kid. There's not really much to say about this one. You pretty much pilot around shooting X-Wings, and that's about it. At the time, I just thought it was so cool that LucasArts would make a game where you could be the bad guy. I love the design of TIE Fighters, and piloting one was pretty cool. Die, Rebel scum. Let's check out the trio of Super Star Wars games on the Super Nintendo. I was never really a big fan of these games at all. They seemed kind of a mess to me. They were developed by JVC and they all have a very similar feel to them. In Super Star Wars, you start out as Luke Skywalker with his blaster, literally killing every single living creature on Tatooine, just like in the movies. I always get bored playing these games because of all the repetitive shooting and/or lightsabering. They just don't feel like Star Wars games to me. Here's Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi. In this one, you start out piloting a speeder where you have to jump huge chasms lest you fall into them. The Mode 7 effects are kind of nice, I guess, but I got bored of this sequence pretty quickly and turned it off. Finally, we have Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. This one, Luke is riding his Tauntaun and waving a lightsaber around, killing everything on the planet Hoth. Again, for me, this game is just kind of more of the same. I didn't really enjoy the first Super Star Wars game, and this one really doesn't mix things up enough for me to care about it. I did play this one long enough to get to the ice cave here at the end of the level, but I turned it off pretty quickly after that. Now here is a Star Wars game that I like, Rebel Assault. While I mostly played this one on PC, the Sega CD version is passable. In this game, you play as an up-and-coming rookie of the Rebel Alliance, and you'll have the chance to pilot several different craft until you master flying them. The game has several memorable levels and really makes you feel like you're in the Star Wars universe, and I like that.
Lord Vader, the battle station plans are not on board this ship, and no transmissions were made. An escape pod was jettisoned during the fighting. No life forms were present.
She must have hidden the plans in the escape pod. Send the detachment down to retrieve them. See to it personally, Commander. There'll be no one to stop us this time.
Yes, sir.
This one's a lot of fun, and I recommend checking it out. You can pick up copies for relatively cheap on the Sega CD and PC. Star Wars Chess is an interesting little title, also released on the Sega CD. It's basically battle chess with Star Wars characters. While playing chess is certainly fun on its own, what you really care about here are the animations of characters killing each other. Playing digital chess can be pretty tedious as it takes a lot of time to move your pieces, but the animations make it all worth it. Star Wars, the arcade game for the Sega 32X, is based on the 1993 arcade game of the same name. It was a launch title for the Sega 32X, and it kinda shows.
Attention all wing pilots. Stand by to receive orders.
Graphically, the game is fine, but it's very, very repetitive. You'll have multiple waves of TIE fighters to take out, and you'll need to take out all of them before you can progress. This game was released in November of 1994, a few months after TIE Fighter was released on PC, so I guess you could say I'd kind of had my fill of space combat set in the Star Wars universe. I won't go as far as to say this is a bad game, but I was expecting a little bit more, especially with Sega's first step into the 32-bit console generation.
Star Wars Episode 1 Racer from the Nintendo 64 is another game I played a lot when I first got my Nintendo 64. And here you can see we have Chester's copy. So thanks, Chester. We're going to check out some footage now.
When The Phantom Menace was released in 1999, it seemed like all anyone could remember from the film, aside from it being kind of bad, was the pod racing scene. It was so popular they released a video game about just that part of the movie, although Intergalactic Senate Filibuster sounds like a lot less fun. This is a pretty straightforward racing game. It was released on the Nintendo 64 and the Sega Dreamcast. One thing I noticed is despite the fact that I really suck at racing games, I was able to come in first place every time, despite crashing into walls repeatedly. My guess is the difficulty was adjusted for kids. If you want to play an easy-to-win racing game set in the Star Wars universe, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer is for you. Finally, let's take a look at the two Rogue Squadron games for the Nintendo Gamecube. First up, we have Rogue Leader. To a lot of people, this is one of the best Star Wars games ever made, and I'm inclined to agree. Both games were developed by Factor 5 and published by LucasArts. Factor 5 did a wonderful job capturing the feel of the Star Wars films, in part because they lifted scenes from the movies and placed them into the game directly. Like the first Rogue Squadron game released on the Nintendo 64, this is also a fast-paced flight action game. It controls well and it's just a blast to play. Just like the ending of A New Hope, this game opens with the Rebel Alliance's attack on the Death Star. The game only gets better from here. I really can't recommend this one enough. 2 years later, Factor 5 released Rebel Strike, the sequel to Rogue Leader. In addition to the ability to pilot several different craft like in previous games, this game added the ability to navigate on foot.
You can reach your next mission objective by following the orange wedge on the radar screen. Good job.
While some of the on-foot missions were pretty clunky, there's still a lot to like here. In particular, I enjoyed this section where you got to control an AT-ST walker. This was a lot of fun. Despite these new gameplay elements, this game just isn't as good as Rogue Leader. Still, it's definitely worth checking out, and if you can find a copy for cheap, you should go ahead and pick it up. It's still one of the better Star Wars games out there. Alright guys, that's going to do it for episode 29 of Retro Buyer's Guide. I hope you enjoyed that look back at some retro Star Wars games. Guys, there are so many more Star Wars games to go over. There's Jedi Power Battles, Republic Commando, Knights of the Old Republic, and even the crappy fighting game Masters of Terraskazi. So hopefully I can go over some of those in a future episode. But until then, thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel so you can keep up with my videos. I've got a lot planned for 2016. Until then, guys, everyone be safe tonight and have a happy new year. Take care and happy collecting.